For 30 years, Iran's most feared weapon was not a missile, not a submarine, and not a warship. Iran's most feared weapon was a threat. The threat to close the Strait of Hormuz, 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, 2 shipping lanes, each 2 miles wide, a 2-mile buffer zone between them. Through this narrow passage flows approximately 20% of the world's oil supply, roughly 17 million barrels per day. The economies of Japan, South Korea, India, and most of Europe depend on oil that passes through the Strait of Hormuz. For decades, Iran warned that any attack on Iranian sovereignty would trigger the closure of the strait. Iranian military leaders publicly rehearsed mine-laying operations. The IRGC Navy maintained stockpiles of naval mines, an estimated 2,000 to 3,000 mines of various types, including sophisticated influence mines capable of detecting and targeting specific ship types. Iran conducted exercises where fast attack boats simulated mine deployment across the shipping lanes. Iran made sure the world knew that closing Hormuz was not just a threat, it was a capability. Then Operation Epic Fury began. American forces attacked Iran, and Iran did not close the Strait of Hormuz. Not one mine was laid, not one shipping lane was blocked, not one oil tanker was threatened. The most powerful card in Iran's strategic hand was never played. Why? This is naval depth. The answer to why Iran did not mine the Strait of Hormuz is not simple. It involves military capability, political calculation, economic self-interest, and the devastating speed of the American attack. Each factor contributed to the decision. Together, they made the Strait of Hormuz the threat that never materialized. Before we examine each factor, it is important to understand the history of mine warfare in the Persian Gulf, because this is not the first time that mines have shaped the strategic calculus in these waters. In 1987, during the Iran-Iraq War, Iran conducted a covert mine-laying campaign in the Persian Gulf. Iranian forces deployed approximately 100 mines in international shipping lanes, targeting oil tankers from nations that supported Iraq. The mining was crude. Many of the mines were old Soviet-designed contact mines laid from small boats at night. But the effect was enormous. On April 14, 1988, the USS Samuel B. Roberts, an Oliver Hazard Perry-class frigate, struck an Iranian MO-8 contact mine while escorting reflagged Kuwaiti tankers through the Gulf. The mine detonated against the ship's hull, blowing a 15-foot hole in the bottom of the ship, breaking the keel and flooding the engine room. The Roberts nearly sank. Her crew saved her through extraordinary damage control, the kind of damage control that American sailors train for and Iranian sailors never mastered. The Roberts incident triggered Operation Praying Mantis, America's retaliatory strike that destroyed 2 Iranian oil platforms, sank the frigate Sahand, and damaged the frigate Alvand. But the mining itself had achieved its purpose. It disrupted shipping, increased insurance rates, and forced the United States to commit significant naval resources to escort operations under Operation Earnest Will. Iran's military leadership drew a specific lesson from 1987 to 88. Mines work, mines are cheap, mines disrupt shipping. Mines force the enemy to divert resources to mine countermeasures, and mines can be deployed covertly from small boats that are difficult to intercept. This lesson informed Iran's mine warfare buildup over the following 3 decades. Iran invested systematically in expanding and diversifying its mine inventory. The approximately 2,000 to 3,000 mines that Iran possessed by 2026 represented one of the most varied arsenals in the world. Let us examine the specific mine types in detail. At the simplest level, Iran possessed large quantities of moored contact mines, floating explosive devices anchored to the seabed by chains at a predetermined depth. When a ship's hull contacts the mine's detonation horns, the explosive charge detonates. These mines are cheap, reliable, and effective against commercial shipping. They can be deployed by any vessel, including small fishing boats, and require no sophisticated technology. Iran maintained an estimated 500 to 1,000 of these simple mines. More sophisticated were Iran's bottom influence mines, devices that rest on the seabed and are triggered by the magnetic field, acoustic signature, or pressure wave of a passing ship. Influence mines are much harder to sweep than contact mines because they have no mooring chain or floating body that can be detected by mechanical sweeping methods. They require specialized mine countermeasure vessels using acoustic, magnetic, and pressure-based sweeping techniques. Iran possessed an estimated 300 to 500 bottom influence mines, primarily of Chinese and Russian design. The most advanced mines in Iran's arsenal were the EM-52 rocket-propelled mines, Chinese-designed weapons that combine a bottom mine with a rising projectile. Let us start with the military dimension. Iran's mine warfare capability was real. Iran possessed approximately 2,000 to 3,000 naval mines, making it one of the largest mine stockpiles in the world. These mines ranged from simple contact mines, essentially floating explosive devices that detonate when a ship hull touches them, to sophisticated bottom influence mines that can be programmed to detect the acoustic, magnetic, or pressure signature of specific ship types. Iran's most dangerous mines were the EM-52, a Chinese-designed rocket-propelled mine that sits on the seabed and launches an explosive projectile upward when it detects a ship passing overhead. The EM-52 is extremely difficult to detect with conventional mine countermeasures because it produces no magnetic or acoustic signature while waiting on the bottom. It activates only when a ship's pressure wave triggers its sensor. Iran also possessed large quantities of older mine types, Soviet-designed MDM-moored mines, Iranian-manufactured Sadaf contact mines, and various improvised explosive devices that could be deployed from small boats. These simpler mines were less sophisticated but could be deployed in large numbers quickly. The plan for mining the Strait of Hormuz, which Iranian military exercises had rehearsed for years, involved deploying mines from multiple platforms simultaneously. Fast attack boats from the IRGC Navy would deploy mines at night, running without lights through the shipping lanes and dropping mines at pre-designated coordinates. Larger naval vessels would deploy bottom mines in the deeper sections of the strait, and shore-based teams would deploy mines in the shallow coastal waters on the Iranian side. The plan required coordination. Multiple vessels had to deploy mines simultaneously to overwhelm any American mine countermeasure response. The deployment had to be completed before American air and naval forces could intervene, and the minefields had to be dense enough to pose a credible threat to commercial shipping. Sparse minefields can be swept or avoided. This coordination was impossible after February 28, 2026. The American attack destroyed the coordination mechanism. The IRGC Navy's communication network was degraded within the first 2 hours of the operation. The fast attack boats that were supposed to deploy mines were instead ordered to attack American warships, a suicidal mission that resulted in the destruction of more than 60 boats. The larger naval vessels that would have deployed bottom mines were either sunk at Bandar Abbas or scattered by the dispersal order. By the time the sun rose on February 28th, the assets Iran needed to mine the Strait of Hormuz were either destroyed, out of communication, or fighting for survival. The mine warfare capability still existed in theory. The mines were still in storage facilities along the coast, but the delivery systems, the boats, the ships, the crews, were gone. There is a deeper issue here. Mining the Strait of Hormuz was always a plan that depended on warning time. Iran needed hours, preferably a full night, to deploy mines across the shipping lanes in sufficient density to create a credible barrier. The mines had to be loaded onto boats. The boats had to transit to the deployment area. The mines had to be deployed at specific locations according to a pre-planned pattern. All of this takes time. Operation Epic Fury gave Iran no time. The American attack was not preceded by a diplomatic ultimatum. There was no 48-hour warning. There was no escalation ladder that Iran could have used to trigger mine deployment before the shooting started. The first indication that Iran received of the American attack was the detonation of Tomahawk cruise missiles on Iranian soil. By then, it was too late to mine anything. This is a lesson about preemption. If your most powerful weapon requires time to deploy and your enemy attacks without warning, your most powerful weapon is useless. Iran's mine warfare capability was a peacetime deterrent. It was designed to be deployed during a crisis, a period of escalating tensions where Iran would have days or weeks to prepare. It was not designed to be deployed under fire, with communications destroyed, with boats burning, with the entire military structure collapsing. The Americans understood this. The American plan for Operation Epic Fury was specifically designed to eliminate Iran's mine warfare capability before it could be activated. The opening strikes targeted not just naval bases and warships, but also mine storage facilities, IRG Sea Navy boat bases, and coastal communication nodes. The plan was to destroy the delivery systems and the coordination network simultaneously, ensuring that the mines would remain in their storage bunkers rather than in the water. The plan worked perfectly, but military capability was only part of the calculation. Iran's decision not to mine Hormuz was also driven by political and economic factors. Iran depends on the Strait of Hormuz for its own oil exports. Iranian crude oil, the primary source of government revenue, is exported through the strait. If Iran closed the strait with mines, Iran would also cut off its own oil exports, destroying its own economy in the process. This is the paradox of the Hormuz threat that analysts have noted for decades. Closing the strait hurts Iran almost as much as it hurts everyone else. Iran exports approximately 2 million barrels of oil per day through the strait. At current oil prices, that represents approximately $150 million per day in revenue. Closing the strait would eliminate this revenue immediately and indefinitely because mine clearance operations can take weeks or months, during which no oil can flow in either direction. Iran's leadership understood this calculation. Even in the extreme scenario of an American military attack, closing Hormuz would transform Iran's situation from a military defeat into an economic catastrophe. A military defeat is survivable. Governments survive lost wars. An economic collapse triggered by self-inflicted damage to your own oil exports is a different matter. It means no revenue to pay government employees, no revenue to import food, no revenue to rebuild. There was also an international dimension. Closing the Strait of Hormuz would have affected not just American interests, but the interests of China, Japan, South Korea, India, and Europe, nations that depend on Gulf oil. China, which imports approximately 40% of its oil through the strait, had communicated privately to Tehran in the months before the operation that any closure of Hormuz would be viewed as an attack on Chinese economic interests. This communication was intercepted by American signals intelligence and influenced American planning. The Americans knew that China had effectively told Iran not to close the strait. This created an extraordinary situation. Iran's most powerful strategic weapon, the ability to close Hormuz, was neutralized not by American military power, but by Chinese economic pressure. Iran's own strategic partner had told Iran that using its most powerful weapon was unacceptable. The final factor was psychological. By the time Iran's leadership might have considered mining Hormuz as a desperate last resort, the scale of the American military operation had already demonstrated that such an act would be futile. America had established complete air superiority over the Gulf. American mine countermeasure ships were already in the area. Any mine deployment attempted after the operation began would have been detected, intercepted, and swept before it could create a meaningful barrier. Mining Hormuz after February 28th would have been a gesture of defiance, not a military strategy. It would have invited further American escalation without achieving any military objective. And Iran's surviving leadership, Those who had not been killed or captured in the opening strikes understood that further escalation was not in their interest. The Strait of Hormuz remained open throughout Operation Epic Fury. Oil continued to flow. Tankers continued to transit. The global economy continued to function. The nightmare scenario that had dominated strategic planning in the Middle East for 30 years, the closure of Hormuz and the resulting global energy crisis, did not materialize. And this outcome has profound implications for the broader strategic picture. For decades, Iran's ability to threaten Hormuz was its primary source of strategic leverage. The threat allowed Iran to deter military action. Any potential attacker had to calculate the economic consequences of a Hormuz closure. The threat gave Iran influence over oil prices. The threat made Iran a factor in global energy security that could not be ignored. That leverage is gone. Operation Epic Fury demonstrated that America can attack Iran without triggering a Hormuz closure. The mechanism that was supposed to deter American military action, the threat to global oil supply, failed as a deterrent. It failed because America attacked too fast for Iran to deploy mines, because Iran's delivery systems were destroyed before they could be used, and because Iran's own economic dependence on the strait made closure self-destructive. China is watching this lesson carefully. China has its own version of the Hormuz problem, the Taiwan Strait. Like Hormuz, the Taiwan Strait is a critical maritime chokepoint through which enormous volumes of commercial shipping pass. Like Hormuz, China has threatened to control the strait through military force. Like Hormuz, the threat of strait closure gives the threatening party strategic leverage. And like Hormuz, the Taiwan Strait threat has the same vulnerability. If America attacks fast enough, with enough force, and with enough precision, the strait can be kept open despite Chinese opposition. But the Taiwan Strait scenario differs from Hormuz in one critical respect. In a Taiwan conflict, China would be the one laying the mines, not defending against them. China possesses the largest naval mine inventory in the world, an estimated 50,000 to 100,000 mines of various types. This is an astonishing number. It dwarfs Iran's arsenal by a factor of 30 or more. China's mine doctrine calls for deploying dense minefields around Taiwan to prevent American naval forces from approaching the island, to disrupt Taiwanese naval operations, and to isolate Taiwan from seaborne resupply. Chinese mine types include advanced influence mines with ship-counting features, mines that allow a preset number of ships to pass before detonating, designed to target high-value targets like aircraft carriers or amphibious ships rather than triggering on the first vessel that passes. America's mine countermeasure capability is, frankly, an area of acknowledged weakness. The Navy's mine countermeasure fleet is small, approximately 11 Avenger-class mine countermeasure ships, and a growing number of unmanned mine-sweeping systems, including the Knifefish unmanned underwater vehicle. This force is not large enough to sweep dense minefields across the entire Taiwan Strait while simultaneously conducting combat operations. The lesson of Iran's undeployed mines applies to China in reverse. Iran could not deploy its mines because America attacked too fast. In a Taiwan scenario, China might deploy mines before America can respond, during the preparatory phase of an invasion, using the cover of civilian shipping to mask mine-laying operations. If China deploys its mines before hostilities begin, the mine countermeasure challenge for America becomes enormously more difficult. This is one area where Iran's experience does not directly translate to the Taiwan scenario. Iran failed to deploy because it was surprised. China, as the initiator of a Taiwan conflict, would not be surprised. China would choose the timing. And if China lays its mines before the first shot is fired, the Strait of Hormuz lesson, that preemption neutralizes mine warfare, would not apply. American planners know this. This is why American intelligence monitors Chinese mine-laying capabilities with extreme attention. Any sign that Chinese vessels are deploying mines near Taiwan would be treated as a potential indicator of imminent military action, and could trigger an American preemptive response designed to stop the mining before it is completed. The mines stayed in their bunkers. The strait stayed open. And the world learned that the threat of closing a choke point is only as powerful as the ability to execute it before the enemy takes it away. But the world also learned something else, that the nation which controls the timing of a conflict controls whether mines become a factor. Iran did not control the timing. Iran lost its mines. If China controls the timing of a Taiwan conflict, the mine equation changes dramatically. And that is why the American intelligence community watches Chinese mine warfare exercises with such intensity. Because the moment China begins laying mines is the moment the clock starts ticking on a Taiwan invasion. And that moment may come with no warning at all. This is Naval Depth. Subscribe and stay with us as this story continues. There is a final irony in the story of the mines Iran never laid. In the months after Operation Epic Fury, the United States Navy quietly increased its mine countermeasure presence in the Persian Gulf. Additional Avenger-class ships were deployed. Unmanned mine hunting systems were tested in Gulf waters. Mine countermeasure exercises with Gulf allies were expanded and intensified. The Navy was preparing for a mine threat that had already been neutralized. The mines were still in their storage bunkers on the Iranian coast. Iran had no means to deploy them. The threat was over. But the Navy was not preparing for Iran. The Navy was preparing for the next conflict. The mine countermeasure shortfall that had been exposed during Operation Epic Fury, the recognition that 4 ships could not sweep an entire strait, was being addressed not for Iran, but for a future scenario where the mine threat would be real and immediate. The South China Sea, the Taiwan Strait, the waters where the next conflict would be fought. The mines Iran never laid taught the United States Navy a lesson that had nothing to do with Iran. The lesson was about readiness, about the difference between having a capability on paper and having a capability in the water, on station, ready to act when the order comes. Iran's mines stayed in their bunkers. America's mine countermeasure improvements will not stay in the budget documents. They will be built, deployed, and positioned where they are needed, before the next conflict begins. Because the next time the mines may not stay in the bunkers. The next time the enemy may lay them first. And America intends to be ready.